Hello, welcome to Module 4 of the plantain farming course. In Module 4, we'll be addressing plantain propagation and planting. In this course, we'll be understanding the process for healthy, high-yielding plants. And the objective is for you to understand the different propagation methods for planting, learn how to select and prepare your suckers for planting, and master the planting techniques to ensure strong plantain growth. First, how do you select and prepare your suckers? What are suckers? Like in the picture, suckers are offshoots that grow from the base of the plantain plant and they are used for planting new crops. And the characteristics of a new sucker is that it is healthy, disease-free, disease-resistant, young, not too old, firm and well-developed with a well-formed corm. What is a corm? The underground part of a sucker, and it is usually rounded in shape. What are the types of plantain suckers available? There are three types of plantain suckers: the primary, the secondary, and the tertiary. The primary is the first offshoot from the main plant. So it's like the first sucker that comes out from the plant, and it's the most robust and can be used for propagation. The secondary one is the one who emerges after the first harvest. While they are smaller than the primary suckers, they are still viable for planting. So these suckers come after like the first harvest of plantain from a plantain tree. And the tertiary, they are typically weaker, right? I would always advise that you avoid the tertiary because they come from the secondary suckers, which is why you want to ensure that you buy a primary sucker or a secondary sucker. After buying your sucker, you need to select healthy suckers, and that is the step to prepare your suckers for planting. First, select healthy suckers that are disease free. Second, remove every damaged or diseased part. Any part that does not shine like the picture you are seeing below is not healthy. Please discard it. Next thing, soak the suckers in fungicide solution so that every fungal infection and bacterial infection in it can die off. After you have deep, the rule here is deep, deep please, not soak overnight. Not soak overnight that you then forget it. Soaking overnight here for us is 3 to 5 days so that it can allow them to soaking overnight is like 3 to 5 days. So the rule is dip it please. Dip it. And after dipping, leave the sucker in a shaded area for 3 to 5 days to allow them to cure. So by the time you have soaked it for 3 to 5 days, you have cured it. So dip it in the fungicide solution and then leave it in a shaded environment for 3 to 5 days so that it can allow every part or cut to heal and reduce the risk of disease for you. After we have done that, now the next thing for us to do is to do propagation. Using the suckers from the mature plant to propagate for new plants. So there is the traditional propagation and then there is the tissue propagation. With the traditional propagation, that's the one you know, right? This is buying suckers and doing it, and this is where you bring suckers and then you replant it. So what that means is that the source of that sucker is the quality of plantain you would have. But for the tissue culture, it's actually in the lab. You sterilize it, we do a lot of lab conditions, build this tissue, allow it to grow, and then it will now develop into a plant. The advantage of tissue culture is that tissue culture own, they are always disease free because in the lab they've done all of the work that needs to be done to make it neat, and they are higher yield for it and faster production. So tissue culture can be used to produce large numbers of plants in a short time. Usually in Nigeria, and most African space, going to biotechnological centers are places where you can get tissue culture at an affordable price. Then we have the in vitro propagation. So this is the method of plant reproduction that involve growing plant cells or tissue in the lab, right? So we select This is actually very technical and very lab centric. So we take a portion of the plant, take it into the lab, sterilize it, put it in a culture, allow it to grow, and then it grows into a full plant, right? But usually for farmers, farmers just focus on using what they know, which is the suckers. So just get your suckers. When you get your suckers, like I mentioned, dip them, allow it to stay for 3 5 days, and get them to the farm. And getting to the farm, ensure you maintain that deepness of 10 to 15 centimeter into the soil, so that the sucker has enough soil coverage to anchor, to make itself stand, right? And still leave some space for other part of it, like other part of the root to grow. That's what we call this the culm, for optimal growth. If the culm do not have space to grow, then you're not going to have good productivity. We spoke about spacing and layout. Don't forget to keep to the spacing, right? If you space it, you allow for air and circulation. You even reduce disease pressure. And if you provide enough space, each plant will grow large. Ensure that at the layout, you have designed a layout that the rows are well defined for movement within your farm. So do not design it in such a way that at the end of the day you are spacing it in a scattered way, that there is no road path, walking path within your farm. If you don't do that, by the time people are going there to harvest, they would match or will not even have space on where to stand and do their harvesting from. You want to avoid that at the planting stage. Remember, you have to clear the land. Remember, you have to work on your soil. Remember, you have to till the soil, as we have previously discussed in our previous model. And now let's talk about the common mistakes. There are four major mistakes that I see a lot of people make when it comes to planting. Selecting wrong sucker. Please don't do that. Don't use a sucker that has disease or a damaged sucker. That's poor yield, waste of time. Your planting depth, e should be very correct. If not, it will affect the growth. Not spacing it, it will make it to have stunted growth. And also, if you no prepare your soil very well, tilling it, putting the fertilizer, especially as we have discussed in the previous module, you are also going to hinder the root development, right? So we had a case study where we looked at two farms. One of them used a disease free sucker, and right, and the other one was using weak sucker. Usually weak suckers are cheap, so there's the thought about, oh, weak sucker, you can manage it. And at the end of the day, we realized that the farm with the healthy sucker grew faster, had better yield, better resistance, didn't struggle with pest and disease. But see, the one with the poor sucker, high mortality rate, a lot of them do not grow. The ones that even grew, their yield were very low. So the one major lesson we learned from it is, guys, always prioritize high sucker irrespective of what is being said to you and how it is being said to you. A proper sucker selection will always help your business. In summary, sucker selection is very important. Choose healthy suckers, choose your propagation technique. Usually I always advise traditional vegetative propagation, where you have to just work with your suckers. If you have access to lab, always look out for tissue cultured, because they are disease free. Ensure that you maintain the depth, the spacing, and you prepare the soil for the optimal growth that you desire. Avoid all the four major common mistakes, and you are sure that you are ready for planting. Thank you, and see you in the next module.